Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in. So let's talk a little bit more about the Karmelo Anthony case. There have been some new developments, and I kind of want to walk you through the legal process, the tough legal process that he and his legal team and his family, obviously, and friends are facing. All right, that's what I want to do in this video. As I told you already, there are no winners in this case at all. None. Nobody's going to win. There is no one who's going to win in this case. In fact, I read an article about Austin Metcalf's funeral. He had a funeral this weekend. His family had a funeral for him. And it was sad just reading about the funeral. It's just sad. I know people are in pain on both sides of this incident. And unfortunately, Austin is not coming back. And I know the Metcalf family and friends are just heartbroken. And I am heartbroken for them. Okay? And I am also heartbroken for Karmelo Anthony and his family and friends because there are no winners here. And it's just sad. Now, I want to walk you through what Karmelo and his family and legal team will be facing over the next few months, maybe even a year or so. Okay? So let's get into that. So again, no winners. The tough legal process for Karmelo Anthony and his legal team. Now, let me say this up front. What everyone should be doing right now basically is praying. First, praying for the Metcalf family because they feel probably two injustices have occurred to them. First, the loss of their loved one. Okay? And second, perhaps the reduction of the bail. Judge Angela Tucker reduced the bail from $1 million to $250,000. And I agree with her decision. It was a tough decision, I'm sure, for her, and obviously for the Metcalf family. But remember, bail is not to punish the defendant. It's to ensure that he comes to court, face the court, and go through this process. And she also added an ankle monitor and home confinement. So if he leaves home, he is going to cause that ankle monitor to buzz. It's going to send a message to law enforcement, to the probation office, and they're going to pick him up and take him back to jail. And this time, he probably will not be able to get out until it's time to go to trial. So we hope that he doesn't do that. We really hope he doesn't do that because it would just complicate things a lot, okay? So it's not like he is just hanging out, in the streets. No, he's on home confinement and he's wearing an ankle monitor. And I believe that $250,000 is enough to ensure that he comes to court, okay? Also, pray for Karmelo and his family and his legal team. I'll have some comments about his legal team here in just a moment. Pray also for the judge's safety because she reduced the bond to $250,000. She has received multiple death threats, and it's my understanding that she has also had to retain security. Okay, I don't know if the county is providing it for her or if she had to come out of her own pocket. But that shouldn't be happening. That shouldn't be happening. There should be no death threats. There shouldn't be any of that, okay? Let this process work itself out. Let it work itself out. Unfortunately, when these things happen, folks just come out of the woodworks with this stuff, whether the victim is black, whether the victim is white. So just let it play out. And you notice I haven't made any comments about the guilt or innocence of Karmelo Anthony. I've dealt with his charges, whatever defenses he may have, and statements that he allegedly made to law enforcement. And the reason I haven't done that is because, as an attorney, I know I haven't seen any evidence, and I'm not going to base my opinion on this case on online statements and documents and so on. Rumors and innuendo and none of that. No, absolutely not. I know better than that. Okay? So yes, we need to be praying also for justice. That should be the goal of this matter, that justice is served. That should be the entire goal, justice. Okay? And then we should pray for our country and its leaders. As Christians, we are instructed to pray for those who are in leadership, and that would be President Donald Trump and his cabinet, the Supreme Court, Congress, state leaders, local leaders, spiritual leaders, family leaders. Pray for all those who are in leadership because we need it. Our country is in very, very, very bad shape. And so we need to cry out to God. We need to pray and seek his face for our nation. All right? Now, Karmelo Anthony and his new attorney, Mike Howard, attorney Mike Howard. I know Mike personally, and let me tell you, he's a really great guy, and he is a really great lawyer. So I am not surprised that the family went out and hired Mike Howard. Now, at the same time, like I told you in my very first video, I thought that Karmelo was well represented when he had Billy Clark and Kimberly Cole. Okay, I don't know them personally, but I know that they are great lawyers, and Karmelo would have been just as in good a shape had he continued to ride with them. I don't know what happened, don't care, none of my business, but right now they have Mike Howard. I do just happen to know Mike and have been knowing Mike for 2 decades, okay? I remember when he was at the public defender's office. Okay, so I go way back there with Mike, and again, he is a good lawyer. Now, I do want to say this, because folks are constantly making disparaging comments about black attorneys. I mean, constantly. Somebody showed up on our YouTube channel, I think on the last video, and just trashed black lawyers. And so the ideal is you stand to do a lot better if you have a white lawyer rather than a black lawyer. And I'm talking about a lot of black people feel that way. I mean, we get trashed all the time from a lot of our people, unfortunately. I'm going to be making a video about that in the next few days because the gentleman who showed up on my channel and said the things that he said about black lawyers it's just horrible. And I did respond to him, but I'm going to make a video on it. So there are any number of tremendous black lawyers in the DFW area who could have done just as good a job as Mike Howard or even better. Let me throw out a couple of names, by the way. Russell Wilson. All right, George Ashley, Kenneth Witherspoon, Stanley Mays, who happens to be my mentor, Heath Harris, Keith and Kevin Harris. These are all African-American lawyers in and around the DFW area. If I didn't call your name out, you know it was a mistake. It's an oversight. But those are great lawyers. So just to say that, no, it's not true that you got to get a white lawyer to get a very good lawyer. That is not true. I've had people to even tell me that. Wow. It's something when your own people come at you like that. So they're in very good hands with Mike Howard, but they could have gotten, again, the names that I just named and would have been in great shape. And then there are a whole lot of white attorneys, other white attorneys, other than Mike Howard, who would have been equally great. We are colleagues over there. And when I say over there, I'm talking mainly in the Dallas County Courthouse, but also up in the Collin County Courthouse. We are friends. We're colleagues. Okay? So he got a new lawyer, Mike Howard, and the judge here, Judge Angela Tucker, up in Collin County. I don't know Judge Tucker personally, but I understand that she has, again, been getting death threats. So, again, please pray for her safety. I understand she's a great judge. She's a fair judge, and she's going to do what she believes is the right thing when it comes to both the law and the facts. She's not going to be the one, I doubt, to decide the case. It'll likely be a jury if it goes to trial, but she'll play a pivotal role. Okay? All right, so let's talk about the legal process. The legal process over the next few months will be very tough for all involved. It will consist of the following. All right? Okay, yes, I had to throw this in because we are about 3 or 4 days out from Easter Sunday. So I want you all to celebrate Resurrection Sunday. All right, had to throw that in there. After all, I am a preacher. All right, so the process, formulation. Now, these are not in order. These are just some of the things that Mike and his team and Karmelo and their family will be doing over the next few months. Formulation, that means strategizing, doing legal research, and so on. So those things are going to be happening, right? As Mike and his team develop what their strategy is going to be, how they're going to approach the case, what their legal theory is going to be. All of that is what I mean when I say formulation. Okay? Communication. So there has to be, or most likely will be, there doesn't have to be, but there most likely will be some communication with the public going on, I would think. I don't know. Now, Mike is a soft-spoken guy. He's a nice guy. He loves to let his work inside the courtroom speak for him. But there is the need for some things to be said because there is a whole nother group of people out here who are trying to control the narrative, who are convicting Karmelo before they even have a trial. I mean, some folks don't know what happened yet in their eyes based on what they've seen. Karmelo is a murderer just because he's charged with murder, just because of the statements that have been in the media. So I would think, I'm not sure, I would think that Mike and his team will have something to say later on as he begins to get the facts. All right, so formulation, communication, and pretrial litigation. So there's going to be a whole lot of work going on inside the courtroom. So they're going to be doing discovery, they're going to be filing motions, and so on. All of that in preparation of a trial, if a trial occurs. All right? So formulation, communication, pretrial litigation, negotiation. So I don't know, but I would think that Mike has negotiated or will negotiate with the prosecution about getting reduced charges, about whether there is the possibility of any kind of plea agreement. If the prosecutor puts some kind of plea offer on the table, Mike is ethically bound to present that plea offer to his client, to Karmelo, and he and his family will make the decision whether they even want to look at that, and so on. Now, of course, the prosecution has to be sensitive to the Metcalf family, and they may not want any kind of reduced charges, any sort of plea, negotiations. They may not want that. They may want to take this to trial and let the chips fall the way, as however they fall. So the prosecution definitely will be in touch with this family, the Metcalf family, a lot, and will make a whole lot of decisions based on the input of the Metcalf family. All right, formulation, communication, pretrial litigation, negotiation, and investigation. This is really, really, really important. Mike Howard will hire a professional investigator. If he doesn't have one in-house, he will hire one or two or three, however many he thinks he needs, and they will leave no stone unturned. Speak to every witness, get every document, get every video, get it all. They can't wait and depend on discovery. All right? The prosecution is duty bound to give Mike all the evidence they have. All the evidence they have. However, that does not take the place for an investigation, a thorough investigation. I mean, just thorough, because you better believe the state will have their investigators out there in big numbers. There are people in the district attorney's office, and it's all they do is investigation on those cases. So, no question, Mike Howard will have his investigators out beating the pavement. Deliberation. When I talk about deliberation, I'm talking about the grand jury. Now, let me explain the grand jury. So the grand jury is a panel of Collin County residents who will hear the evidence that the state has, and they will decide if there is probable cause for an indictment. Every felony case in Texas has to be indicted. So it's really the grand jury who will determine whether or not this case should be indicted. And even before the grand jury deliberates, the Anthony team, Karmelo and Mike and his team, they have the right to what we call an examining trial. An examining trial. And the purpose of the examining trial is to see if it even should go to the grand jury. And of course, a lot of defense attorneys also use it as a way to get an early peek at what the prosecution is holding. So not only will a grand jury hear this, but an examining trial, which will have a judge, a magistrate judge, who will hear the examining trial, and that judge, again, that judge's job is just to see if it needs to go to the grand jury. Now, another thing that Mike can do, I don't know if he will, but one of the things we do in some felony cases that are going in front of a grand jury is we will prepare a grand jury packet. And what that is, we'll put together a packet of information to show the grand jury who our client is, all right, so that they can see, again, the person, the real person, not just who the state says this person is. Because keep in mind, we don't have the right to be present when the district attorney's office, the prosecutor, is presenting their evidence to the grand jury. So what many district attorneys' offices will do is allow us to submit the grand jury packet. And in that grand jury packet, we let the grand jury know that this person is a great student, a great person, never been in trouble, blah, 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 blah. All the stuff that needs to be said to kind of counterbalance what the prosecution is likely going to share about our client. I don't know if Mike is going to do that. We don't do it in every case. We do it in some cases. You know, it's a strategic move. Mike has done many of these cases, so he'll decide whether or not they want to do that. Okay? All right. Formulation, communication, pretrial litigation, negotiation, investigation, deliberation, and trial preparation. At some point, there will be a period where you know you're going to trial and you need to start earnestly preparing for it. Now, most attorneys start sort of preparing for trial early on, much earlier than here. But you don't know if you're going to trial, early in the case. You gotta get your hands on everything and just work everything out up until okay, this case is likely going to trial. And so at that point, you start earnestly preparing for trial. And like I said, you already been doing it, but now in 6 months or 90 days or whatever it is, we are definitely going to trial. And that consists of those pretrial motions I talked about earlier. Well, having hearings on some of those motions. That also includes putting together your trial notebook. All right? Everything you intend to use at the trial. You and your legal assistant or your paralegal start putting together your trial notebook. You also start preparing witnesses. Okay? You start preparing witnesses, start going over the evidence with them, start preparing them to take the stand and to testify, and a whole lot more. A whole lot more. But that's a part of trial preparation. It is a very tedious process. It's like playing chess, actually. I mean, it's a chess match against the state. And the state has unlimited resources. So you got to take whatever budget you have, and you got to, work hard to try to give your client the very best, if it's a trial possible, right? Your client deserves a zealous defense. And a competent defense. So those are some of the things that will happen over the next few months in Karmelo's case that his legal team will do in the family. So let me say in closing, once again, withhold judgment. You don't know, you haven't seen the evidence. Don't base your opinion on the arrest report. Don't base it on certainly what you hear online and so forth. Just wait and pray, like I said. I mean, that's literally what Jesus said. Wait and pray. All right? I will keep you updated as new things happen in this case. And until then, remember, stay prayerful for everyone involved in this case.